Next, we're moving on to Delia Lloyd, who delivers many different workshops for us. But today, she's going to be focusing on a new workshop that we have, which is on cross-cultural communications. So, Delia, with Say What?
Thank you, Lorraine. And we're going to kick off this one with a warm-up exercise. I am going to put the exercise is called What Do They Need to Know About Me? And I'm going to put some sentences on the board now. I want you to read them quickly and choose the one that you think most grabs you and write your answer in the chat along with the country you're from. Ready? Go. Anybody want to be intrepid and put something into the chat? Oh, wonderful. Here we go. Being very direct, says Wouter, who's from the Netherlands. Usually go to weddings an hour late, says Vic, representing the Indian side of his heritage. Saul Draper, who's British, I believe. Sarcasm, absolutely understated. Loves, is that Simone or Simone flexible? I like that. I'm not quite sure what that means. Do you mean flexible with respect to everything, Simone? Is that what you mean?
Flexible about being on time, which is
Ah,
could be
time.
yeah, on time could be
Okay.
10 minutes later or so.
Okay, I love this. Used to be a suit in Britain to signal power. For Danny, who's also British, punctuality's polite. Interesting. Vic is with Simone. Ryan says forming a line. Ah, yeah, I've encountered that. Some cultures forming a line and assume everyone ought to be in a queue. Other people are all over the place, and that's okay in other places. Any other people want to jump in on that one? Oh, Rain, thank you so much. Wearing a white flower means mourning in China. Beautiful. Did not know that. In fact, some of these I'm familiar with, and some of them, this one didn't know at all. Thank you so much, Rain. Okay, so the purpose of that exercise, it's a wonderful warm-up for this workshop because as you look at those, you start to learn things about people you didn't know. So the objective of this workshop is to introduce you to both a mindset and a skill set for effective cross-cultural communication. Now, this is a super easy workshop to motivate. As we all know, we are increasingly working in global teams where people come from all over the globe with different backgrounds, different experiences, different perspectives. One. Two, post-COVID, things are even more virtual than they were before. So you've got teams working across time and space. And if you put those together, you get a lot of opportunity for misunderstanding, if not conflict. So the purpose of this workshop is to help elucidate a different way of approaching cultures so that you avoid these kinds of conflicts and misunderstandings. And the workshop unfolds in three sections. We start with a conversation about what is culture, harder to answer than you think. Then we move on to what exactly is that mindset and what are those skills that facilitate intercultural learning. And finally, we do some role play around conflict resolution. Now, in this mini version we're doing today, we're just going to quickly review those first two topics to give you a feel for this. So let me throw it back to you. And this time I want you speaking, not writing unless you can't speak out loud, in which case, by all means, use the chat. What does culture mean to you? No bad answers. This is a brainstorm. Go. Raise your hand so I can see you. Anybody. Or write it down. Thank you, Lorraine.
The way we do things.
Okay, the way we do things. Thinking about national culture here. What else? What is culture? How do we know? Any group with shared characteristics, Vic. Nice. Ryan.
Assume norms.
Norms. So unstated ways of behaving, rules for behavior. Nice, Ryan. Anyone else? No
I was
bad
gonna
answers.
I was gonna say behaviors, sort of group behaviors.
Thank you, Danny. Being late, Vic says, which is true. One's relationship to time is a norm. It's actually true. It's a norm that varies across cultures. Anyone else? Any other things? Nice, Rain, again, a beautiful analogy here. It's the air you breathe. You realize it without existing, and actually you realize it, but it's not something visible or concrete. Anyone else? Okay, so what I want to do is use a metaphor here to build on what you just said. It's a metaphor of an iceberg. And if you all imagine an iceberg for a minute, you know that 20% is above water and 80% is below. So if you look at the diagram I'm going to put on the board, culture works that way too. Above the water are the things we see on our instantly recognizable signals or markers of culture. Do women wear headscarves in Muslim countries? How far apart do you stand when you speak to someone? Do you look them in the eyes? Do you look down? Do you look away? That's all visible. Unfortunately, that's only 20%. 80% is the stuff below the water. And that's the stuff you can't see. What are norms around time? Do you arrive early, as you do in China, as a sign of respect? Or do you come late, as you do in France, so that you give someone more time to prepare? What are the norms around hierarchy? Does the boss make all the calls, or does everybody get a say? How about trust? How is that built? Through people or through tasks? A whole host of things you can't readily recognize, but need to work through if you're going to work productively with other people. What I like to tell people is when you start working with someone from somewhere else, or you arrive in a new country, nobody holds up a sign that says, "Hi, I'm Delia. This is the UK. Here's how we do things." You aren't going to get that. You've got to work through it so you can work with them. So that's what the workshop is about. And we spend most of our time in part 2, which is the intercultural learning bit. And in this part, I begin by introducing a couple of norms that one needs to approach this topic. And then we spend a lot of time on skills, building on this idea of a growth mindset. We introduce this idea of 2 norms that matter a lot for cultivating an ability to relate well with other people who come from somewhere else, openness to the experiences of people who come from somewhere else, and a sensitivity to receiving and empathizing with their perspectives. And once we have those in place, we spend most of this part digging in on 4 key skills you need to effectuate those norms, which are listed here. Now, in the real workshop, we spend a lot of time on each of these, and we delve in with exercises, one-to-one, individual, group. For today, I'm just going to give you a taster of one exercise that gets at 2 of these skills, curiosity and empathy. And that's what we're going to do now. So I'm going to put some scenarios on the board now. In each of them, there's a difficult person. I want you to assume for this exercise that that person is acting with positive intent. And then as a group in a brainstorm, so raise your hand, put it in the chat, we're going to quickly generate as many possible different interpretations for their behavior as we can. Ready? Here we go. Here's scenario 1. Read it and let's talk. What's going on? Is this a bad person? Jerky person? Okay, Vic says she can't hear. I'm not sure if he's being facetious, but knowing Vic, I suspect he is. Saul says she's nervous. Okay, but she could have a lot of anxiety. She could be shy, and these are personal characteristics. What about cultural ones? Simone's nodding. What do you think, Simone? Or Simone, apologies.
No,
What else could be
shy? What else could it be? She doesn't know who you are. Maybe she doesn't know your rank. If she can say hi to you, she can address you.
Okay, perfect. She doesn't know who you are or your rank. In some cultures, it's rude to actually address someone with higher status than you. It's better to look away. And she's never met you before. Wouter says there's a language barrier. Very possible too. And Vic is building on this idea of positional business. She may not know what to say. She may not be in a culture where people open up with, hey, how's it going? How's the weather? Doesn't do that. That's not how she works. Yes, Rain, go ahead. You wanted to say something.
Yeah, I think in the Asian culture, people are not used to nodding at each other and saying good morning, and like people they don't know tentatively. Like if we are strangers or we meet on the street, we tend to nod at each other and say something, and people from Asia could feel it's really strange, and because nobody greets each other in this way. They only greet people they know. Yeah.
Okay, I love that. And Simone is also nodding. I'm nodding because that's right. In some cultures, it's weird, unusual, unheard of to nod at someone. Someone wouldn't even know what you were doing, and especially if I don't know you. Yeah, who is this person? Why do I have to greet them? And why do they keep saying hi to me? I've never met them. They're not in my team, etc. Okay, nice. Let's go to scenario number 2. Thoughts? This person is well-intentioned, this manager. What's going on? Give me some explanations. Simone says Gen X. Is that for this one, Simone?
For this one, yeah, because
Yeah.
Gen X usually just work, 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 leave the company.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
bad? You gotta say. Oh,
Love it. It's none of this, hey, Gen Z, go do your yoga. Let's get back to the drawing board. And here's what you're doing wrong if you really want to improve. Love it. What else? They think, nice, Danny. They may assume you already know what you're doing well and only need to improve on the bad stuff. Ryan gives us a type A manager, which is personality characteristic or communication style. Yep, could be. That's just their way. Anyone else? Anyone ever here worked in France? Because this is very much the style of giving feedback in France. Having worked in France and having had students in my workshops on cross-cultural, in France, the norm generally is you tell them what to fix rather than what's going well. Vic said from the Netherlands, that's a little inside joke here at Eye Opener, I think, aimed at Wouter. Anyone else on this one? Okay, let's try number 3. Happens all the time, those of you who work at business schools or anywhere. What's going on here? Possibly. Anybody?
well,
Okay, very
on a-
nice, Vic.
sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Simon. I just want to pick up on what Vic said. This happens all the time, and we've all experienced it. They make assumptions. She doesn't drink alcohol, or her culture, in part of her religion is not to drink alcohol. We're not going to invite her. It might be offensive to her, or she doesn't eat this kind of food. Very good, Vic. Simone, go for it.
I would go the other way and take a look at myself if I were the student and say, what am I doing that keeps them from inviting me? Sometimes you also have to look at yourself, not just in the others.
Absolutely. We do need to look at other people. We do need to look at ourselves if we're sending a signal, which is get away from me. Nice, Danny. They may know each other. It's not because they don't like you or something's wrong with you, but this is just, they're all a friendship group or a team or something. Although the assumption here is they're in a team already. Anything else? What else is going on? Anybody? Claudia?
They might think you're not interested or you have other plans. I don't know.
Yeah. Or you're not someone who you come to work. Again, I'm trying to accentuate here the cultural as opposed to the personal or behavioral characteristics. Perhaps they think you come for a culture where it's just not done to take a break from work or to hang out socially with your friends. So I spent a lot of time in Latin America over the years. And there, if you didn't do social things with your colleagues, that would be frowned upon. Having grown up in America, it's not always a culture of let's hang out. It's actually, there's a barrier. There can be a real barrier between work and social. Coming to England where everyone goes to the pub, you don't do that in America. Okay, so I'm not suggesting all of these are cultural differences. They could be personality or style, but they can all be cultural differences, and they're easy to misread. And in the worst case, in the easiest case scenario, you offend someone. In the worst case scenario, you create conflict and disagreement and discord. So this brings us back then to the lovely iceberg that I started with earlier. The problem with cross-cultural communication is this. Each of us brings our own iceberg to every interaction. So step number one, going to something Simone said, is think about your own assumptions, your own biases, your own behaviors and expectations first, and get to know those. We do a lot on that in the workshop. And then, if I may, to push this metaphor beyond where it possibly should go, don't cling to your iceberg. Let go, metaphorically, and try to think about where someone else is coming from in terms of their expectations, their norms, their behaviors, their assumptions and biases. And you'll do a lot better at working productively and hitting your bottom line, whatever that is, wherever you are, and also getting on and having fun. So I'm going to end there and see if anyone has any questions. Anybody? No? Simone,
No,
you
I
look like
might,
you're about to say something.
no, I might, because I think it's interesting. I might reach out to maybe Lorraine to know a little bit more about this workshop. Okay, because you got my interest, but I need to understand a little bit more about how it's going to be run. But it's, thank you.
Of course, Simone.
Okay, thank you.
We can,
Good to hear. Anyone else? Anyone else have a question, a comment, a thought?
I think
Yes.
go Ray.
Sorry, Rain, go ahead.
So yes, I find it really fascinating, especially the iceberg uh, notion. I wonder if in this workshop you use any cross-cultural communication theories like Hofstede or any
Yeah.
other people who write about it. Or yes,
Yeah.
could you tell us a bit more about this framework?
Mostly what I do, Hofstede is part of the backdrop for this. In fact, I use his definition of culture, which is the unwritten codes, goes back to whoever mentioned norms, Ryan, I think. I mostly draw on Erin Meyer, who has this lovely notion that we don't think in binaries, we think in continua. So in her model, which is a version of a lot of these models, including Hofstede, you have 8 dimensions that go, individual versus collective, time, trust, communication style, etc. And I try to get people thinking less in terms of binaries and more in terms of how they would assess themselves on these 8 different dimensions, so that we enter the conversation of skills with an understanding that culture is not a monolithic thing and actually is a scale. I can see you've done your reading, Rain. That's always good to hear.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Vic, did you want to jump in on that, or anyone else?
No, Delia, I was going to just say, in terms of a question around what kind of experiences you have when you get students typically from over 30 different countries doing this kind of, having this kind of conversation. What kind of discoveries do you think?
Well, absolutely fascinating. That first exercise I had you do, we do that in a room. We don't do it I haven't done this virtually yet, but we do that in a room. And things people don't know, Rain might know this. In China, the most important person sits in a certain place at the table, and you don't sit down till they've walked in. There's all these things. So you learn little bits and bobs. But in the exercises where we talk about empathy, a lot of people, and I have the students talking to each other pairwise, a lot of people share, for example, what it's like to have a manager who only criticizes. And then to get the other person to understand, because we're all going to be managers one day, or that's the assumption in all these business school groups, to see what that feels like. So we get them developing an awareness of how they might approach management, for example, later on. Yes, Ryan.
Thanks, Delia. I was just curious to understand what you do as a facilitator to create that environment of trust where the dialogue and the conversations can be had in that kind of really healthy way.
Okay, well, just to very quickly, I don't want to reveal my opening bang, which is what we call the strong start, but the very first exercise gets rid of all that. It's called Uncocktail Party. And you invite people to a cocktail party where they have very different expectations of how to behave. I give them a sheet and they have to mingle. And right away, we break down all the barriers and everybody starts to smile and acknowledge how weird it is to force yourself into someone else's space or to be forced in. So that's how it starts. I'm being quick only because of the time. Bav wanted to say something, I think, and then I think we need to end. I don't want to run over. Bav, did you want to join in?
No, Bav's just joined. She's in the next session.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought that was a question. Okay, I think we're going to end it there. Thank you so much. You guys were amazing. And I hope to see you all at a future date where we can have an uncocktail party together.
Thank you, Delia. Thank you very much. And thank you for your timekeeping as well. Brilliant.